I stood there, my hand gripping the letter, the ink on the eviction notice still fresh. The same company I had helped build, my son's company, was turning its back on me. "You're just a relic," Caleb's words echoed in my mind, cruel and careless. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I wasn't just going to walk away. No, this time, I'd show him what it really means to underestimate me. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The clink of crystal echoed through the rented downtown hall, bouncing off marble floors and high ceilings like a judgment. Warm light bathed the room in a soft gold, but Martha Hill felt none of it. She sat near the back, her hands folded, spine erect, watching her son wobble slightly on the stage with a champagne flute in hand. "Let's raise a glass," Caleb slurred lightly, eyes glossy but burning with pride. "To the future, run by the young, driven, and, well," he paused dramatically, scanning the room for effect. "Not by the, let's say, experienced, shall we?" His eyes locked onto his mother. "Unlike my useless old retiree of a mother who's here gracing us with nap energy." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter stirred the room like a cold draft. A few polite chuckles, some winces, a few sips to avoid reacting. Martha blinked once behind her glasses. Her lipstick didn't move, but her jaw set ever so slightly. Vanessa, perched beside Caleb with a stemmed glass of Pinot, added with an arched brow, "She still thinks Elise is something you get at the DMV." This time, more laughter, cruel and relieved. The kind people gave when they were just grateful the joke wasn't aimed at them. At the table closest to the buffet, 14-year-old Lily stared daggers across the room. She reached under the white draped table and gripped her grandmother's hand, small and trembling. Martha squeezed back gently. Her nails were neatly trimmed. No rings, just silence. The music resumed, something jazzy and forgettable. The waiter brought around another round of wine, and Martha's glass remained untouched. Across the hall, Caleb beamed, basking in his colleagues' laughter like a stage light. A vice president patted his back. A junior associate whispered something that made him grin wider. Martha excused herself quietly. She adjusted her scarf, smooth and navy, against her cream blouse, and stepped out through the side exit, unnoticed. The door clicked behind her, sealing in the noise. Outside, the air was crisp. Sacramento evenings always carried a cooling calm after the valley heat of the day. The city lights painted reflections on the hoods of parked cars, shimmering like secrets. Martha walked slowly toward the sidewalk, heels clicking a careful rhythm. Across the street, a tall office tower rose, 20 stories of glass, steel, and soft, glowing ambition. It stood firm against the night like a monument to people like Caleb. Young, confident, dismissive. Martha paused at the curb, arms folded. Her breath came out in a quiet puff of steam. From the tower's third floor, lights still glowed. She tilted her head slightly, his floor, his office, his domain. A cab honked lazily 2 blocks away. A couple laughed drunkenly down the sidewalk behind her, but Martha stood still, silent, calculating. Her gaze never left the glowing windows above. From inside the party, laughter rose again, distant but sharp, like knives clinking together. She turned on her heel and walked slowly down the block. Her steps were measured, deliberate. She pulled out her phone, unlocked it, and tapped open her notes app. The only sound in the room was the slow, methodical scrape of her fountain pen against crisp paper. Her small leather-bound notebook lay open beside a steaming mug of chamomile tea, its faint scent curling into the night like a whispered intention. In her neat, looping script, still disciplined from decades of grading student essays, she wrote, October 14th, 8:17 p.m., Maywood Hall, Capital District, Caleb. Unlike my useless old retiree mother, Vanessa. She doesn't even know what Elise is. She paused, letting the words sink in again, not out of pain, that had already hardened into something more precise, but out of clarity. She dated the page, closed the notebook with care, and reached for her laptop. Just then her phone buzzed. Helen. "Let me guess," Helen said before Martha could speak. "He embarrassed you, again." Martha's voice was calm, clipped, but firm. "This time, I'm not letting it go." Helen's breath caught on the other end. "You're serious?" "I've been called worse," Martha said, "but never by someone I raised." She clicked through her browser history, then opened the bookmarked commercial real estate listing she'd first spotted 6 months ago out of idle curiosity. The Capitol Tower, 20 floors of rentable office suites, looked no less regal under moonlight than it had during business hours. The listing hadn't changed. Available, negotiable price, motivated seller. Martha's eyes narrowed. She copied the link into her notes, then saved the page. A ping on her social feed caught her attention. Vanessa had posted 3 photos from the party. One showed Caleb mid-toast. One showed the couple arm in arm. And the third, cropped tightly, was of Martha sitting alone at the back table, her expression unreadable. The caption read, "Youth leads. Wisdom watches. Park retiree watch. Parasek next gen." Below, a string of comments poured in. Most were bootlicking acquaintances. "You guys look amazing. That toast was legendary. Tell her it's time to chill and knit." But nestled between them, a quiet one stood out. "Lily? She deserves better than that." A few minutes later, it was gone. Deleted. Martha stared at the empty comment thread, lips pressed in a thin line. She opened another tab and began researching leasing companies, ownership rights, and commercial purchase structures in California. Terms like net lease, triple net, and escrow management flickered across her screen. It didn't intimidate her. She had spent her entire career managing teenagers, budgets, staff drama, and school board politics. This wasn't chaos. This was a system. Systems could be studied, and then controlled. Outside, the breeze rustled the leaves on her lemon tree. The scent of citrus drifted in through the open window, grounding her in the quiet confidence of her own space. No applause, no mockery, just focus. She reached once more for the notebook and added, "Checked listing. Tower still for sale. Opportunity active." She stood up, stretched, and walked over to the window, gazing into the suburban night. Her reflection in the glass didn't look old. It looked resolved. The next morning, dressed in a crisp navy blazer and gray slacks, Martha walked with purpose through the Capital District. The tower stood tall and untouched by ego, indifferent to who walked under its shadow. As she entered the lobby, cool air rushed to greet her. The marble floors shimmered beneath her low heels, and soft music played from unseen speakers. Businessmen and women passed without notice. Martha's eyes scanned the space with intention, and there, next to the security desk, tucked beside a brass elevator panel, she spotted it. A small white rectangle taped to the inner glass, unassuming, handwritten. "For sale. Inquire at 916-555-2409. It was so modest she nearly smiled. Like someone didn't want it widely known. A quiet exit, not a spectacle. How fitting. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number, her fingers steady on the screen. As it rang, she looked up again at the wall directory. 3rd floor. Argenta Dynamics. Suite 302. C. Hill, Regional Manager. A light flicked on behind the glass of the 3rd floor. Martha watched it calmly. The call connected. "Good morning," she said smoothly. "I'm calling about the listing in Capitol Tower. Yes, I'm interested. I'd like to schedule a walkthrough." Martha sat in a sleek downtown office, her hands folded neatly on her lap, as the commercial broker adjusted his cufflinks and clicked open a presentation on his laptop. Outside the window, the Capitol Tower loomed like a sleeping dragon, glass-paneled and quiet, hiding stories behind each level of its smooth gray skin. "So," the broker said, swiveling the screen toward her, Capital Tower, 20 floors. Currently 73% occupancy. Owners liquidating assets due to corporate restructuring. We're seeking a serious, stable buyer. Martha offered a polite smile, but her eyes were fixed on the floor plan on the screen. Every suite was labeled tenant names, square footage, lease durations. Her gaze hovered over floor 3, suite 302. A beat passed before she blinked and asked, "Can you send me the full rent roll?" The broker blinked, not surprised, but assessing. "Absolutely. You mentioned a background in education." 35 years, she said, smoothing her slacks. "But I've managed more budgets than most building managers do in a lifetime." He chuckled nervously and tapped on his keyboard. "Well, you'll see the tower's been stable. Long-term tenants, most of them quiet professional firms. A few tech startups, legal offices, a couple of corporate branches, asking prices high, but negotiable." Around $5.4 million, Martha didn't flinch. She had already run her numbers. Her pension, plus the life insurance from her late husband, a Navy officer who had insisted she never downplay her intelligence, left her a sizable cushion, more than enough. "I'd like to move fast," she said. "Can we schedule a building walkthrough this week?" The broker's eyebrows lifted. "Certainly. Wednesday morning?" Martha nodded. "And I'd like to bring my own legal advisor. His name is Patrick Ewan. That's a good call. Patrick's solid. I've worked with him before." Later that afternoon, Martha sat across from Helen at a sunlit cafe near the Capitol Mall. Helen, reading glasses perched halfway down her nose, flipped through a printed breakdown of the tower's lease structure. She scribbled quick calculations in the margins with a ballpoint pen. "You realize this is a power move of legendary proportions," Helen muttered, not looking up. "He called you a useless retiree, and you're about to own his water cooler." Martha sipped her tea. "I'm not looking for applause. I just want control." Helen glanced over the numbers again. "It's tight, but it checks out. You'll need to keep a reserve for maintenance and property taxes. But if the tenants stay, it'll pay itself off over time. You'll even profit." Martha allowed a quiet breath of satisfaction. "I'm not flipping it. I want it steady." Helen set down her pen. "Then Patrick's the right choice. He's good with loopholes. Landlord protections, lease leverage, title transfers. Quiet, but sharp." The next morning, Martha dialed Patrick Ewan's office from her kitchen. Glancing at the folder of printouts she'd labeled Capital Tower, Personal. The phone clicked, and a calm, deep voice answered. "Patrick Ewan speaking." "Mr. Ewan," she said. "This is Martha Hill. I was referred by Helen Morris. I'd like to schedule a consultation. I'm considering a commercial property purchase." "Of course," he said. "Do you already have a building in mind?" "Yes," she replied. "Capital Tower." There was a pause. Then, "That's a big one. I don't intend to flip it. I intend to keep it. Quietly." Another pause. Then Patrick's tone shifted slightly. "That's the right way to approach it. Let's talk this week." That evening, as dusk turned the Sacramento skyline gold, Martha sat at her dining table, reviewing the rent roll the broker had emailed her. Her finger trailed down the list of names, dates, lease terms. Then it landed on the third-floor entry. Argenta Dynamics, Suite 302. Tenant Caleb Hill, Regional Manager Lease Renewal, pending. Martha leaned back slowly. Her eyes stayed fixed on the name, like it might vanish if she blinked. The tower wasn't just any opportunity. It was his building, his floor, his name. And his signature would eventually land on her contract. Martha stepped into Patrick Ewan's office just before 10, her heels clicking softly on the polished concrete floor. The waiting area smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. Clean, sharp, unfussy. A receptionist offered her water, but she declined. She wasn't thirsty. She was focused. Patrick's office door opened precisely on time. "Ms. Hill," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, his shirt crisp, and his tone measured. He was the kind of man who rarely raised his voice because he never needed to. Inside, The space was lined with dark wood bookshelves and a single massive window overlooking Midtown Sacramento. A framed print above his desk read, "Leverage doesn't yell, it waits." "Let's take a look," Patrick said, gesturing for her to sit. He slid a manila folder across the desk and flipped it open. Capital Tower, current ownership is corporate, clean title. No liens, no pending lawsuits. Seller wants a fast, quiet deal. Martha adjusted her glasses. Is that common? Not unusual when companies downsize or merge, he said. And buildings like this? They're trophies until they're liabilities. He tapped the paperwork. But not for someone like you. This is a clean deal if you want it. Martha sat back. And the tenants? Patrick turned to a color-coded spreadsheet. Most are in year-to-year renewals. That includes Suite 302, Argenta Dynamics. They've renewed quietly the past 3 years. That lease is up for renegotiation in 60 days. She glanced at the name. Her son's company, Caleb's Domain. Walk me through what I'd control, she said. Patrick leaned forward. As the building owner, you control rent increases, maintenance schedules, common area decisions, and lease terms. With proper notice, you could evict for breach, raise rents, deny renewals. Some limitations exist under tenant protection ordinances, but nothing unusual. Helen, seated beside her and flipping through a legal pad, interjected. In other words, if she plays this smart, she becomes their silent queen. Patrick nodded, with full legal authority. Martha glanced at him, her voice level. Including my son. Patrick paused, then offered a faint smile. If you buy this building, yes. Caleb Hill and Argenta Dynamics would be your tenants. They'd pay you rent, same as anyone else. The air between them shifted, not tense, but charged. Martha reached for the leather folder she'd brought, pulling out her financial summary, a recent appraisal of her house, and her pension statement. I've liquidated 2 smaller investments, she said, and the insurance from my late husband's Navy pension fund is ready for transfer. I'm not mortgaging, I'm paying clean. Patrick's brows lifted slightly, impressed. That will move things quickly. We'll start with an intent to purchase. That locks the property under your name during due diligence. Then I'll draft a formal purchase contract. Martha didn't hesitate. Print it. As Patrick stepped out to finalize the paperwork, Helen leaned toward Martha with a subtle smirk. You sure you don't want to wear a crown to the closing meeting? I'm not here for show, Martha murmured. I'm here for position. When Patrick returned, he set the form down in front of her, along with a slim silver pen. I can walk you through it, he offered. I've read contracts for decades, she replied. This one's just heavier. She read every line before signing, the tip of her pen gliding smoothly as she inscribed her name. Helen watched in silence, her eyes gleaming. Patrick took the document, nodded once, and slipped it into his folder. Congratulations, the building is off the market. Pending closure. Martha stood, smoothing the front of her blazer. Outside, through the wide window, Capitol Tower caught the noon light, glinting like a polished dagger. You'll handle communications with the current tenants? She asked. I'll be discreet, Patrick said. They'll never see you coming. Not until you want them to. Martha smiled, quiet, precise, and sharp at the corners. She already knew when. The conference room was silent but electric. Fluorescent lights casting a muted glow over the closing documents spread across the mahogany table. Patrick sat across from Martha, calm and methodical, flipping each page with deliberate care. To Martha's right, Helen scribbled figures in her notebook while sipping lukewarm coffee. The air smelled faintly of toner, paper, and determination. Page 34, Patrick said, sliding it toward her. Final signature. This closes the deal. Martha didn't blink. Her pen moved in steady strokes, sharp as her expression. One flourish of ink, and it was done. Capitol Tower now belonged to her. Patrick extended his hand. Congratulations. Welcome to ownership. Martha returned the handshake with quiet strength. Thank you, Mr. Ewan Helen, let out a breathy laugh, both impressed and wickedly satisfied. Vanessa will choke on this news. Maybe now she'll learn what a lease really is. Patrick chuckled under his breath, but didn't comment. He was too professional for gloating, but the energy in the room said it all. Caleb Hill had no idea his mother now owned the very building that housed his fragile corporate ego. The broker, a man named Troy with shiny cufflinks and a smile built for negotiations, returned from the copier with a full packet of duplicates. "You've got a clean title transfer, no flags, no holds. I'll notify the seller. It's yours, Mrs. Hill." Martha tucked the papers into her leather folder like she'd done it 1,000 times. She wasn't giddy or smug, just firm, composed. This was a decision made with precision, not revenge. But that didn't mean she wouldn't enjoy watching it unfold. Patrick turned to his laptop, fingers tapping quickly. "I've already submitted the title transfer for county recording. We'll get confirmation within 72 hours. Until then, we're technically in escrow, but it's locked. The building's off-market," Martha nodded. "And the tenants. Nothing changes until we choose to notify them," he said. "Lease renewals will come through your LLC. They'll pay rent like normal, unaware of the new ownership. Unless you want them to know." "Oh, I'll tell them," Martha said, voice smooth. "Just not yet." At home that evening, she sat at her kitchen table beneath the soft hum of the pendant light, finalizing the wire transfer details with Helen's help. The numbers were sobering. Decades of savings, her pension, and the entire military death benefit from Gordon. Every penny was accounted for. "You're sure about this?" Helen asked, her tone shifting from advisor to friend. "You don't get that nest egg back." "I'm not just buying a building," Martha said. "I'm buying dignity, permanence, and a lesson he'll never forget." The next morning, the funds cleared. The closing agent confirmed receipt, and the documents were filed. Capitol Tower was no longer just glass and steel across the street. It was hers. Later that day, Lily dropped her backpack on the kitchen floor and froze when she saw the framed certificate on the table. "Is that—" Martha smiled and turned the frame toward her. "Ownership deed. Effective this morning." Lily's jaw dropped. "You bought the whole building?" Martha nodded. "Every floor." Lily whooped, spun in a circle, and then leaned in with a grin. "Grandma, that's genius. Dad's going to faint." "Let him," Martha said, then winked. A week later, at Argenta Dynamics, Caleb sat in a glass-walled meeting room, halfway through a quarterly operations review. A folder was slid in, front of him by an assistant, fresh off the copier, stamped with a post-it. Urgent, lease renewal. Caleb barely looked up as he flipped to the signature page. "Standard terms?" he asked without reading. "Same as last year, just with the new management company listed." He scoffed. "Fine, hand me a pen." With a flourish, Caleb Hill, Regional Operations Manager, self-declared master of the office, signed the lease extension for Suite 302. He didn't notice the name of the new owner's LLC printed at the bottom in crisp font. Retired Horizons Holdings. Owned, operated, and signed into existence by his useless old retiree mother. The espresso machine hissed behind the receptionist at Argenta Dynamics as Caleb strolled through the sleek, glass-paneled lobby like he owned the place. He had that bounce in his step again, the kind he reserved for moments when people were watching. His blazer was freshly pressed, his Rolex catching bits of light with every gesture, and his voice just loud enough to be overheard by the team trailing behind him. "Our company just locked in a killer lease," Caleb said, smug and assured. "Long-term, prime terms, locked rate. It's the kind of deal you only get when they want you in the building." His assistant, a young man with nervous eyes and a tight clipboard grip, nodded too fast. "That's great news, Mr. Hill." Vanessa, leaning against the front counter in a high-waisted pencil skirt and designer heels, chimed in with a smirk. "Finally, some security. I was tired of you acting like the office could disappear any day." Caleb grinned. "Not anymore. This place is ours." 3 floors up, tucked in a manila envelope slid quietly across Patrick Ewan's desk. the truth whispered otherwise. Martha sat across from the attorney, her hands folded calmly over her leather purse as he pulled out the fully executed lease agreement. Signed by Caleb himself, Patrick said, tapping the signature line with his index finger. He's just leased from you for another 5 years. Martha tilted her head. He didn't read it? He didn't question a thing, Patrick replied. The LLC structure you chose is clean. No trail that links directly to you unless someone really digs. But they won't, not unless you make noise. Helen sat in the corner, adjusting her glasses and smirking over her tablet. Let him sit in that nice office chair. He's paying rent to his mother every month just to breathe in it. Martha nodded, calm but resolute. And if he defaults? Patrick's smile was razor sharp. Then you evict him. But for now, enjoy the slow boil. Legally, financially, this is airtight. They can't wiggle out of it without paying a steep penalty. At home later that night, Lily hunched over her history homework, while Martha laid the signed lease gently across the table. The teenager looked up, scanning the page, then broke into a quiet laugh. He really signed it, Martha tapped the page. Clear as day. Lily took out her school binder, slipped the copy inside a clear sleeve, and zipped it closed. This goes in the in case of emergency section. Martha raised an eyebrow. Just in case Dad forgets who owns the roof over his cubicle. The next morning, the sun rose over Sacramento's concrete skyline in golden sheets, and Martha made her way to the small credit union she'd used for decades. She walked past the teller lines, waving politely at familiar faces, and stepped into the office marked Business Services. An assistant manager handed her a thick envelope. First rent check came in this morning. Certified mail. Martha opened it slowly, savoring the soft crinkle of paper. A polished check, made out to Retired Horizons Holdings, LLC, sat neatly atop the letterhead. The memo line read, August lease payment, Suite 302. She stared at Caleb's company name printed just below the signature, her mouth tugging at the edge in something like a smirk, only quieter, deeper. He called me useless, she said softly. And now he's sending me his money. By noon, the check had cleared. Patrick confirmed it. The money, Caleb's company money, was in her account. Legally earned, legally owed. That evening, Helen brought over a bottle of sparkling cider, and they clinked glasses at Martha's kitchen table, the lease sitting between them like a trophy. This is chess, not checkers, Helen said, grinning. Martha didn't celebrate loudly. She just opened a folder labeled rent receipts and filed the cleared check with deliberate care, but just as she closed the folder, her phone buzzed. Patrick's number, she answered calmly. Yes? His voice was even, but the tone carried weight. You might want to come in. There's something you should see. The next rent check. It's already late. The check felt heavier than paper had any right to. Martha slid it from its envelope again before stepping into the credit union, as if to confirm the name was still there. It was Retired Horizons Holdings, LLC, her LLC, printed neatly on the payee line. And just beneath it, the logo of her son's company. She walked across the tile floor of the small Sacramento branch, her soft heels clicking with quiet certainty. The air inside was cool, citrus-scented, humming faintly with the sound of printers and low conversations. A teller waved her forward. Anna, the same young woman who used to help Martha manage PTA funds back when she ran the high school. Well, Mrs. Hill, Anna said, scanning the check. Looks like retirement's treating you well. Martha smiled with practiced subtlety. Just trying to stay busy. Anna keyed the check into the system, then paused as the number flashed on the screen. Commercial rent payment. Congrats. Most people your age are scaling back, not acquiring property. Let's just say I prefer quiet investments, Martha replied. Across the lobby, heels clacked like gunshots. Vanessa, in oversized sunglasses and a linen pantsuit, strutted toward the counter. She froze mid-step, her head tilting slightly toward the conversation. Her gaze flicked to the check on the counter, her expression tightening just enough to register curiosity or suspicion. Anna smiled obliviously. Your tenant included a nice memo, August rent, right on time. Vanessa lingered near the deposit slips, not pretending hard enough to be uninterested. Martha took the receipt and turned slowly, her voice light but aimed. Timing matters in business. Some people forget that. Outside, the Sacramento sun poured onto the sidewalk in sheets of heat. Lily leaned against the passenger door of Martha's car, earbuds in, sipping from a smoothie cup. Martha held up the deposit slip. Lily pulled one bud out. He paid? Martha nodded. First of many. A wide grin stretched across the teenager's face. Oh, he has no clue. Martha folded the slip carefully, tucking it behind her checkbook. Lily leaned in close, voice a whisper. Let's not tell him yet. Let's see how long it takes before he realizes you're his landlord. That night, over tea and leftover apple tart, Martha placed the bank receipt and a photocopy of the check into a red folder marked Lease Payments. Her handwriting on the label was steady, unhurried. Inside were clear plastic sleeves, one for each month of the 5-year lease. August was now full. She paused after closing the folder. Her hands didn't shake, but they felt warmer than usual. Not from fear, from control. The next morning, her phone buzzed. Patrick Ewan's name lit up on the screen. She answered as she always did, without hello. I have a concern, Patrick said, without preamble. Just reviewed the building account. Your son's company, they're already behind. Martha's throat tightened slightly, but her voice remained level. Behind? They just paid. One check, that's it. But utilities? Late. Shared maintenance dues? Missed. And their account contact hasn't returned my last 2 emails. Martha glanced at the red folder still sitting on the kitchen table. Do I need to step in? Not yet, but keep your eye on the calendar. If they miss the next one, we begin formal notice procedures. Martha leaned back in her chair, staring out the kitchen window as birds pecked at her bird feeder and traffic murmured in the distance. Sacramento's quiet hum felt different now, as if she could hear its machinery working for her. Let him be late, she said finally. I've waited long enough to send a bill. The envelope arrived 2 days late. No call, no apology. Just a crumpled check with a postmark that dared to pretend nothing was wrong. Martha held it between her fingers like a used tissue, dry, carelessly sealed, and late. She smoothed the envelope flat on her desk, reached for her red ledger, and flipped to the page marked Tenant, Caleb Hill, Suite 200. In her neat, angular handwriting, she wrote, Rent due, first received, 3rd. Late notice, pending outside. The autumn wind scratched across her window pane like fingernails on glass. She didn't flinch. She simply folded the envelope in half and slipped it into a file labeled Delinquent, Q3. By noon, the formal late notice was printed, signed, and tucked inside a business envelope with Martha's LLC letterhead, Retired Horizons Holdings, clearly displayed in the upper corner. No fanfare, no threats, just language sharp enough to paper-cut pride. At the post office, she handed the envelope to the clerk with a firm nod. Certified mail, please. That evening, Vanessa stood in the kitchen, swiping aggressively on her phone. Some idiot sent a warning letter about the rent being late. Like 2 days late. Must be some overpaid landlord trying to look important. Caleb dropped his briefcase with a thud. Typical greedy owner. They squeeze you for every delay. It's corporate extortion. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Bet it's some retiree trying to play businesswoman. Lily, curled on the couch with a book, didn't look up, but her lips quirked ever so slightly. When she visited Martha later that week, she walked straight to the home office and pulled the late notice copy from the file drawer like she was checking on a treasure map. They got it? She asked. Martha nodded. Certified receipt confirmed at 2:43 p.m. Tuesday. Signed by a front desk clerk named Darcy. Lily grinned. And they still don't know it's you. They'll learn when they need to, Helen called after dinner, voice laced with amusement. Just saw a post from Vanessa complaining about ruthless landlords bleeding the working class dry. Oh, the irony. Martha stirred her tea, steam rising in lazy curls. He said I didn't know what a lease was. Now he's late on mine. Helen chuckled. Imagine Caleb's face when he learns it's you he's paying. Martha didn't laugh. She simply said, I'm not doing this for his face. I'm doing this for my own. By Friday, Patrick had already drafted the first of 3 legal templates: late notice, breach of lease, and, just in case, eviction intent. He emailed them with subject lines so clean, they cut like razors, for future use, if needed. Patrick's note read, still early, but worth being ready. One more missed deadline, and you'll have grounds for action. Martha saved the documents in a new folder titled Enforcement Tools. Meanwhile, the office buzzed with new energy. Caleb had announced another team party to celebrate the closing of a minor deal, a cheap win disguised as a morale boost. The location? The same downtown office tower, the same leased suite, the same floor, the same building. As Friday evening arrived, lights blazed through the tower's windows. The thump of music pulsed faintly from the open balconies. Champagne flutes clinked. Plastic laughter echoed across the lobby floor. Caleb raised a glass, basking in his self-created spotlight. To resilience, to growth, to working through setbacks. Martha didn't attend. She didn't need to. She sat at home with Helen and Lily, folding a fresh copy of the lease into a plastic protector. The rent check was filed, the late notice documented. The legal templates locked and loaded. Lily munched on popcorn and pointed at the building's listing online. They're partying in your investment. Helen shook her head. The walls have ears and receipts. Martha didn't say much. She looked through her window across the night skyline, where the office tower glowed like a monument to denial. The rooftop was strung with lights that blinked like tiny, smug smiles. A jazz trio played near the bar, their notes floating above the murmurs of finance talk and humble brags. Caleb stood front and center, blazer unbuttoned, whiskey in hand, basking in a pool of his own arrogance. Here's to thriving, he shouted, lifting his glass. The crowd quieted. Even when our landlord bleeds us dry, some retiree with a stick up their account ledger. Scattered laughter. One coworker choked on his slider. Caleb chuckled, clearly proud of the line. Let them send notices. Let them whine about checks. We're still standing. Stronger than ever. Martha stood quietly near the buffet, her hands clasped in front of her as if attending a funeral. The only thing that flickered on her face was the reflection of champagne bubbles. Helen stood beside her, silent, eyes flicking toward Patrick Ewan, who gave a subtle nod. It was time. She didn't walk to the front with fanfare. She moved like a librarian returning a long-overdue book, calm, precise, purposeful. Patrick met her halfway and took the slim black folder from her hand without a word. The music paused. "Excuse me," Patrick called out, projecting over the rooftop hum. "Mr. Hill," Caleb turned with practiced annoyance until he saw the papers, until he saw Patrick. Patrick opened the folder and removed 3 documents: a notarized deed, a lease agreement, and a summary of property ownership, all with the LLC header, Retired Horizons Holdings. Patrick's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I thought, for clarity's sake, we'd correct the record. The building your company occupies, this rooftop, this entire floor, was purchased 4 months ago. The legal owner is Mrs. Martha Hill, operating through her company. You've been paying her rent. Late, I might add." The silence was instant and seismic. Vanessa's glass tilted, slipping from her fingers and shattering against the tile. No one moved to help. Caleb's smirk fell like wet plaster from a cracked wall. What kind of sick joke is this?" Patrick held out the documents. "Not a joke. Legally registered. Deed transferred. Lease signed by you." Caleb lunged forward, snatching the papers, flipping through them with growing panic. You're lying. This isn't real." "Page 3, signature section," Patrick said, coolly. You re-signed your lease last month. I believe you even bragged about it. The crowd was shifting, watching. Co-workers glanced between each other like theater-goers during a twist ending. A few already had their phones out. Someone whispered, "Isn't that his mom?" Martha stepped forward now, just enough. Her tone was serene, her words clear. You raised a glass to the future, Caleb. I just ensured I owned the floor you toasted on. Vanessa hissed. You tricked us. No, Martha said evenly. You underestimated me. That's different. Lily stepped out from the corner, arms crossed, her eyes locked on her father. Guess the retiree's not useless. Caleb looked like a puppet with half its strings cut. He turned, muttering curses under his breath, before storming off past the hors d'oeuvres table, knocking over a centerpiece of tulips and sparking glass as he went. Vanessa scurried after him, heels clacking across the rooftop like warning bells. No one clapped, no one spoke. They just watched. Patrick leaned toward Martha. That was well played. She exhaled slowly, tension sliding from her shoulders like a coat she no longer needed. It wasn't about humiliation, she murmured. It was about balance. Helen raised an eyebrow. That looked a lot like justice to me. As the party fizzled into whispers and awkward exits, Martha turned her gaze to the city skyline. Lights shimmered off the building's steel and glass, proud and unbothered. But back near the edge of the rooftop, Lily's phone buzzed. She checked it, blinked, and whispered, "Grandma, he just posted. He says he's going to challenge the ownership in court." Martha didn't flinch. She simply took the empty folder back from Patrick, slid it into her tote bag, and zipped it closed with finality. "Then let him bring the storm," she said. "I built this roof to stand under it." Caleb's name appeared at the top of the motion, bold and indignant, as though fonts could scream. The accusation read like a tantrum in legalese. Improper use of funds stemming from deceased veterans' life insurance. Potential family fraud. Motion to nullify sale. Martha read it once, then again, then slid it across Patrick Ewan's desk, where Victor, a litigator she'd known from her years as a principal, sat with an arched brow. "He actually filed this?" Victor asked, tone disbelieving, fingers tapping the table. Patrick nodded. "He's claiming you manipulated the transaction, used funds that should have belonged to the family, and bypassed his consent." Victor gave a dry laugh. "Consent? He's not even a beneficiary. The insurance policy was under your name. You're the legal spouse." Martha's lips barely moved. "He thinks because I'm quiet, I don't read contracts." Patrick leaned back in his chair. He also attached a copy of a family photo from 1996 and highlighted a paragraph about moral obligation. "That's the caliber of evidence we're dealing with." Victor smiled. "This will take 10 minutes, maybe less." The courtroom was beige, humming with fluorescent lights and muffled yawns. Only 5 people sat in the gallery. One was Vanessa, chewing her thumbnails so hard it looked like self-punishment. Caleb sat next to her, jaw clenched, face ruddy. He looked like someone ready to win a battle he didn't understand. Martha wore a pale gray suit and her late husband's wedding band on a chain beneath her blouse. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Victor stood, papers in hand. "Your Honor, the policy in question was a life insurance payout to Mrs. Martha Hill from her late husband, Gordon Hill. She used it, along with verified pension savings, to purchase a commercial property. There is no joint ownership, no misappropriation, no fraud. And Mr. Caleb Hill, the plaintiff, has no legal claim to the funds or the property." The judge, a woman in her 60s with sensible shoes and a stare that had once probably melted prosecutors, looked over her glasses. "So noted," she said. Then to Caleb, "Mr. Hill, do you have anything substantive to add?" Caleb stood, flustered. "She used family money. It was meant for all of us." Victor didn't look at him. "No, it wasn't. The policy documents are signed. Your name is nowhere on them," the judge sighed. This isn't a family dinner. This is a courtroom. Motion denied. Dismissed with prejudice. Caleb's face twisted. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, the judge replied, already standing. You've wasted the court's time. The gavel hit the wood with a clean crack. Outside, Vanessa trailed after Caleb like a storm cloud losing steam. She hissed, You said it would work. It should have, he muttered. From behind a column, Helen stepped into the sun. Sunglasses perched low on her nose. That's round 2 to you, she whispered to Martha, handing her a cup of black coffee. Martha gave a tiny nod and sipped. I don't even like coffee, she said softly, but it tastes better today. From across the street, 2 of Caleb's co-workers watched them. One nudged the other and said something Martha couldn't hear. But she saw the glance they threw Caleb's way, and she saw what it meant. 2 days later, Caleb walked into the office building, her building, and his badge didn't open the executive floor. He tried again. Nothing. When he finally took the elevator to the HR department, his supervisor waited, face pinched with rehearsed empathy. Effective immediately, the woman said, You're being moved back to client accounts. It's a restructure. Caleb's mouth opened, then shut again. This is about my mother, isn't it? She didn't answer. Instead, she handed him a cardboard box and pointed toward a smaller desk near the copier. As Caleb walked past his co-workers, no one met his eyes. Whispers swirled behind him like flies around decay. And in the quiet corner of a home office across town, Martha tucked away the court's dismissal in her folder labeled, Called Me Useless. Then she reached for a manila envelope marked Next Steps. The office smelled different from the corner cubicle, like toner, stress, and someone's forgotten tuna sandwich in the break room fridge. Caleb Hill, former supervisor, now shared a partitioned workspace with 3 entry-level associates who kept their earbuds in and their heads down. The demotion wasn't just a pay cut. It was a humiliation measured in hallway glances and avoided eye contact. His nameplate was gone from the executive suite. The only thing left of his former status was the way his voice still tried to boom during morning meetings, even though no one looked up. The whispers started in the elevator. First, a young analyst. You heard his mom owns the building, right? A muffled laugh followed. Bet she'll start charging him for breathing next. Caleb heard it. Every word. They echoed louder than the metal doors closing behind him. He burst into the apartment later that evening, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. Vanessa looked up from her laptop, eyes sharp behind her designer glasses. They're saying you bought the building, he said. They're laughing at me. Vanessa's expression curdled. Maybe if you hadn't humiliated her in front of everyone, she wouldn't have done this. Caleb flinched. Are you on her side too? Vanessa stood, crossing her arms. She made us look like fools. You let her. Down the hallway, Lily sat curled in her room, headphones over one ear as she scrolled through a group chat full of gifs. One caught her eye, a cartoon grandma in sunglasses with the caption, When your landlord owns your job. She didn't send it, but she smiled. Quietly. Caleb barged in without knocking. Did you know about this? Lily blinked. Know what? Your grandmother, the building, the rent. Everyone's talking like she's some real estate queen. Lily's voice was steady. Maybe she is. His eyes narrowed. You've been spending too much time with her. She listens, Lily said, and that was it. Simple, cutting. Caleb turned and left, the door slamming behind him. The next morning, Martha's kitchen smelled of cinnamon and brewed coffee. Lily buttered a piece of toast while Martha reviewed her ledgers. The rent check from Caleb's firm had arrived 2 days late. Again. Patrick had highlighted the delay in red and emailed her twice. She slid her glasses down her nose and sipped her tea. They're racking up late fees, she murmured. Helen, seated across from her with a scone and spreadsheet, smiled dryly. Death by 1,000 penalties. How poetic. Martha didn't laugh, but she didn't disagree either. Lily walked over, placing a piece of toast beside her grandmother's tea. He's angry, she said. Really angry. Martha looked up. He's always been angry at what he doesn't control. Lily hesitated, then whispered. He yelled at me. Martha's eyes sharpened. Did he touch you? Number just scared me. Martha set down her pen. You are not his punching bag. You never will be. Helen exhaled slowly. Do you want me to escalate this with the attorney? No, Martha replied. Not yet, but we'll be ready. She reached across the table and took Lily's hand. You're my legacy, not him. You're who I built all of this for. That evening, Patrick called. His voice was steady, but it held weight. They've missed the grace period on their second late payment, he said. Technically, we're within rights to start eviction proceedings. Martha didn't answer right away. She stared out her living room window at the golden tint of the Sacramento skyline. The building, her building, sat framed in the distance. She breathed in once, deeply, then spoke softly but clearly. Prepare the paperwork. Patrick's voice was calm. We may need to start eviction proceedings. Martha didn't flinch. Then we will. The pen didn't tremble in Martha's hand. Not this time. The papers were perfectly aligned on her kitchen counter, beside a ceramic cup of lukewarm tea and a half-eaten slice of almond cake. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the wood like quiet applause. She took a breath and signed the eviction notice. No anger. No regret. Just ink. Patrick Ewan watched from across the table. He didn't say anything until the final stroke was done. Well, he murmured, sliding the paper into his leather portfolio. That's the end of their tenancy. Helen, seated nearby with her ever-present legal pad, gave a small nod. And the beginning of your freedom. Downtown, the lobby of the office tower hummed with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable whispers. The elevator chimed, and Patrick stepped out in his crisp navy suit, shoes echoing with every step. He walked with purpose, not arrogance, just the kind of deliberate calm that drew attention without asking for it. He paused at the front desk, greeted the receptionist by name, and requested Caleb Hill. When Caleb emerged, his face was already sour. What now? Patrick handed over the envelope without ceremony. Notice to vacate, 30 days, signed and legal. A beat of silence followed. Caleb didn't open it, didn't need to. His co-workers froze mid-sentence around him. One woman's coffee slipped, splashing onto her desk. Another quietly reached for his phone, pretending not to record. Vanessa appeared from the corridor, stilettos sharp against the tile. What is this? She snapped. Patrick looked between them. Your lease was broken by missed payments and penalties. You have 30 days to vacate. Vanessa's face twisted in disbelief. She can't do this. She owns the building, Patrick said. Yes, she can. Vanessa threw her handbag over her shoulder and stormed out without a word, heels clacking like accusations. Caleb just stood there, gray around the temples, hands clenched, powerless. Back at home, Lily was curled on the living room rug, sketching on her tablet. She looked up as Martha returned. Did you do it? She asked, eyes wide. Martha held up a simple manila folder. It's done. Lily scrambled to her feet and threw her arms around her. Grandma, you really did it. Helen raised a toast with her mug of coffee. To calculated grace. That evening, Martha sat outside on her porch. The wind carried the soft rustle of trees and the occasional siren from downtown. A warm breeze kissed her cheek as she flipped through her garden journal, her pen hovering above a page that read, August, finally free. She didn't hear the footsteps until they were on the steps. Caleb. He looked different now, smaller. Shoulders hunched, suit wrinkled, like it had been grabbed from the back of a closet. He didn't speak immediately, just stood there in the fading dusk like a boy waiting to be scolded. I had to park 3 blocks away, he finally said. No guest spaces left. Martha didn't invite him in, didn't offer tea. He stepped closer, voice quieter. Please, don't do this. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the desperation behind the carefully practiced frown, but she didn't soften. You gave me insults, she said. I gave you 30 days. He swallowed, eyes flicking toward the house, then back to her. "This isn't just about rent," he said. "You're trying to destroy me." Martha stood, calm and unshaken. "No, Caleb. I'm showing you who built what you tried to destroy." For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, just a whisper. "I was wrong." She stepped back inside without replying, leaving the porch light on behind her. Caleb stood in the shadows, surrounded by the quiet ticking of consequences. Caleb stood in Martha's kitchen like a guest who knew he'd long overstayed his welcome. His hands trembled just enough to make his coffee ripple in its cup. He didn't drink it. Couldn't. "I'll resign," he said quietly. "Just don't go through with the eviction." Martha didn't look up from the paper in front of her. She had been slicing apples with a small paring knife, arranging the wedges into neat fan shapes on a ceramic plate. Her silence stretched until it was nearly unbearable. Finally, she set the knife down. "I don't want your job, Caleb," she said. "I want my respect." He blinked at that, confused maybe, or just too proud to fully grasp what it meant. His face was hollowed out from days without sleep. Gone was the smug son who once toasted his mother's irrelevance in a room full of strangers. This man looked like he'd been peeled layer by layer, until only panic remained. "I didn't mean to—" "You did," she interrupted, meeting his eyes. "And you meant it every time." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed with consequence. She pushed a folder across the table. He hesitated, then opened it. Typed in bold at the top, "Terms of Mutual Agreement, Legacy Waiver and Guardianship Clause." Caleb scanned it quickly, his throat tightening with every line. The terms were brutal in their precision. Clause 1. Caleb would make no future legal or financial claim to Martha's estate. Not now, not in the event of her passing, not through his spouse, heirs, or any third party. Clause 2. In the event of any custody disruption, Lily's legal guardian would be Martha Hill, not Caleb, not Vanessa. Clause 3. Caleb would remain on lease through the end of the 30-day period, but must begin vacating immediately. No public statements allowed to discredit Martha or her ownership. He looked up, lips parted. "This is ironclad," Patrick Ewan said, stepping from the doorway. "Signed, witnessed, and notarized by me." Caleb's eyes flicked between them. "You had this ready." "I've had this ready since the first rent check," Martha replied. Vanessa's voice sliced through the hallway like a cold knife. "You're not actually going to sign that, are you?" She appeared at the archway, suitcase in hand, jaw set in fury. "Because if you do," she hissed, "you lose everything, your status, your role, your spine." But Caleb had already lost those, slowly, one by one, and now stood before the one woman who'd quietly outplayed him in front of the very people he'd once tried to impress. He lowered his pen. Patrick cleared his throat. "Keep in mind, if you don't sign, she follows through on eviction. You leave in shame. No leverage. No deal." Vanessa's nails dug into the leather handle of her suitcase. "You're pathetic." "You're leaving anyway," Caleb muttered. And with that, he signed. Patrick gathered the papers with the practiced motion of a man who'd ended 100 negotiations before breakfast. "He can't undo this now," he said. "There's no loophole, no appeal. It's done." Vanessa turned without another word and dragged her suitcase down the porch steps, her heels clacking a trail of fury. The car door slammed. Gravel crunched as she peeled out of the driveway. Caleb didn't follow. He remained at the table, staring at the edge of the apple plate like it might give him answers, but there were none left. "Where's Lily?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Martha placed the plate in the fridge. "At her friend's. She doesn't need to see this." "You're turning her against me." Martha gave a short, dry laugh. "You did that all on your own." By the end of the week, the whispers had reached every office cubicle in the building. His mom forced him into a contract, one whispered by the vending machines. "She owns the whole place. It's like corporate chess," another murmured. The hallway, once filled with Caleb's swagger, now rang with avoidance. And somewhere behind the walls, he used to command. The new owner sat by her window with a cup of mint tea and a pen, watching the city settle beneath her. The brushed steel plaque outside the office tower had been swapped the night before. The new one shimmered in the morning sun, catching the attention of every passerby with its sharp serif lettering, Hill and Horizon Properties, LLC. Martha stood just inside the glass lobby doors, hands folded neatly over the crook of her purse. Her reflection blended with the glass behind her, just enough to see both the past and the present. She didn't smile, not yet. Lily pressed her nose against the glass and read the plaque again, lips moving as she traced the letters. "That's us," she whispered. "That's our name." Martha looked down at her granddaughter, who had shed her middle school sarcasm for something quieter, deeper, a new kind of pride that had nothing to do with rebellion. She reached down and gently touched Lily's shoulder. "It is." Helen arrived moments later, balancing 2 paper cups from their favorite corner cafe. "I figured we could toast the classy way," she said, handing Martha a cup. "No plastic flutes or cheap bubbly. Just Colombian roast and dignity." They sat on the bench just outside the entrance, the same one Martha had once used to steady herself the night Caleb made his speech. That felt like 100 years ago. "So," Helen said, between sips, "your name's on the building, your son's lease is ending, and his wife just filed for separation. You know, subtle wins." Martha raised an eyebrow. "You make it sound like a soap opera," Helen chuckled. "It would be if the lead actress didn't carry herself like a chess master." Inside, office workers buzzed past the front desk, glancing curiously at the new plaque. No one approached. They didn't need to. Word had already settled into the walls. The woman they once thought was just Caleb's old mom now owned the carpet under their shoes. A week later, a courier delivered an envelope addressed in Caleb's handwriting. Martha paused, fingertips brushing the torn corner. She opened it slowly, not with dread, but with something resembling detachment. Inside was a single sheet of stationery. "Mom, I know I can't undo what I said, or how I said it. I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm asking anyway. Forgive me, Caleb." She read it twice, once for content, once for tone. The first time, it sounded like regret. The second time, it sounded like survival. She didn't respond, not yet. Instead, she pulled out her estate documents from the safe beneath her desk. With steady hands, she reviewed every clause Patrick had helped her write. Every line remained untouched, except for one. Beneficiary. Lily Hill. Full Estate Addendum. Annual Scholarship Fund for Women in Education. The Gordon Hill Legacy Award. She added one final note in the margins, endowed through Hill and Horizon Properties. Then she picked up the framed photo of Gordon that rested beside her reading chair and moved it into the newly finished home office. It belonged there now, watching over her work, her real work. Outside, the rose bush Helen had planted last season was finally blooming. The petals were soft and stubborn, refusing to wilt even under August heat. Martha stepped onto her front porch and watched Lily ride her bike up the driveway, hair tangled in the wind. Cheeks flushed with joy. "You're late," Martha called. Lily grinned, breathless. "Had to help Ms. Barlow set up the computer lab again. She says I'm the only one who doesn't break things. Smart runs in the family." Lily tossed her backpack by the steps and plopped onto the porch swing. "Ms. Barlow also said she wants to apply for the scholarship." Martha blinked. "Already?" She saw the name on the flyer. She cried a little. Lily paused, then added, "I didn't tell her it was from you." Yet. Martha sat beside her and sipped her tea. The house felt different now, still, settled, safe. The mail rustled in the screen door's basket. One more envelope sliding slightly free. Caleb's return address again. Not legal, just personal. And written across the top in bold black ink. "Forgive me." The envelope lay unopened on Martha's desk for 3 days. She didn't avoid it. She simply allowed it to exist, like a leftover bruise, no longer painful, but proof that pain had once been there. When she finally opened it, she read Caleb's apology slowly. It was neater than his last. Less rushed, fewer excuses. Just a son with his pride collapsed and his options threadbare. She folded the letter carefully, slipped it into a manila folder labeled Done, and placed it in the back of the filing drawer beneath Property, Hill, and Horizon. Then she slid the drawer shut and turned the key. By mid-morning, she was walking the polished floors of the building she now owned, accompanied by Patrick Ewan, who kept pace with the calm rhythm of a man who didn't need to speak unless something truly needed saying. The hum of copy machines, the tapping of keys, and the quiet clinking of coffee mugs filled the corridors. Each sound, once irrelevant, now meant income, contracts, control. Martha didn't walk like a visitor anymore. She walked like legacy. You'll want to consider repainting that third-floor hallway, Patrick noted. It's looking a little tired. Martha glanced up at the flickering overhead light. Noted. When they reached the break room on the 5th floor, the same one where Caleb had once raised a glass to belittle her, Martha paused. No toast today. No son posturing in front of strangers. Just a quiet hum of microwaves, 2 women in HR gossiping about lunch, and a vending machine clicking a bag of pretzels into place. She stepped to the window where the city unfolded in layers: concrete, glass, motion, ambition. In the reflection, she didn't see a retired principal. She saw a strategist, a woman who had outlived assumptions. Later that afternoon, Lily helped her hang the framed deed in their home office. It took 3 tries to get the nail straight, and a bit of giggling when the first hammer strike dented the wall. "It's heavier than I thought," Lily said, holding the frame steady while Martha adjusted the level. "Most things worth keeping are," Martha replied. Once the frame was up, they stepped back together. The official seal gleamed under the glass. Hill and Horizon Properties, LLC, sole ownership, Martha A. Hill. Below it, a gold plaque engraved with a single date, the day Caleb called her a useless old retiree. Helen arrived not long after with lemon bars and her usual lack of subtlety. "So," she said, peering at the frame, "from useless retiree to power player." Martha smirked, more like quiet operator. Same thing, just with better snacks. They sat together in the kitchen, sun streaming through the blinds. The house no longer a retreat, but a headquarters. Martha sipped her tea, listening to the casual chatter, the way Lily hummed as she organized school papers on the living room floor. Everything in its place. "You know," Helen added, "a lesser woman would have shouted her victory from the rooftop." Martha smiled. "I didn't need to shout. I built the rooftop." As the evening cooled, tenants across the city continued their work without knowing the full story behind the name on their rent checks. Business remained steady. Elevators moved like clockwork. No angry confrontations, no spectacle. Just structure, stability, power with polish. And somewhere, in a smaller apartment across town, Caleb sat beneath dimmer lights, with no title on his door and no leverage left to wield. Martha returned to her chair beside the framed photo of Gordon. She placed her hand gently on the table beside it. "You would have liked how it ended," she murmured. "No shouting, no gloating, just dignity served cold." The wind whispered outside, rustling the oak tree near the window. Lily looked up from the floor. "You okay, Grandma?" Martha nodded. "Perfect." The silence between them was soft, earned, complete. And as the shadows stretched across the living room wall, Martha leaned back, her spine straight, her eyes steady. "My son called me a useless old retiree at his office party, so I bought the building he worked in.